Warhammer 40,000's 10th edition has been a wild roller coaster for every faction, each one starting out as a little baby index that later grew up into a full-sized codex. Some factions became wonderful codices filled with many fun detachments, and others were AdMech and Grey Knights. However, early in the 10th edition, there was an index causing trouble, and when they became a full codex, GW punished them for their behavior. Unfortunately, in their anger, GW accidentally broke the Genestealer's favorite toy. GW had transformed it into the worst detachment ever made. That day, Genestealer players everywhere cried out in agony, for they found their beloved brood brothers broken and dying, with a cold-faced alien killer looming in the distance.
Hi, it's been a while, and so for those that aren't in the know... Is that good enough or is that cringe? A detachment has three main parts. The actual detachment rule, which is the core flavor of the detachment, and the rule you're basing your army on, a set of 4 enhancements that allow you to buff up your characters with extra rules for a small points tax, and finally a set of 6 stratagem cards that you can pay an in-game resource to use, and the effects can range from defensive, offensive, and support use cases. And a soup detachment is when you're allowed to take models from a different faction in your army list. Genestealer cults since the dawn of time have been allowed to take some Astra Militarum units, the lore reason being we infected their personnel and stole their stuff during our Day of Ascension. The flavor, or idea, of this detachment is that when your more trained Astra Militarum cultists fire upon the enemy, your regular blue-collar cultists gain a bonus to hit because of spotting or crossfire or something. During the days of old, we used to be limited to 25% of our army being Astra Militarum units, and there were no rules or buffs that applied to them, but we could take them in whatever rule set we wanted. Now, the issue is that Genestealer cults were a bit of a rambunctious index. We were absolutely swarming the enemy in truly endless bodies, and the idea that we could do that on top of gaining some pretty serious firepower, we would be impossible to stop. Now, this detachment allows us to take up to 50% of our army as Astra Militarum units, but we can only bring them in this detachment. To make sure that it could never really become an issue, they ran the detachment rule down such a tight railroad with so many restrictions. Using the rule became a kinda niche use case, and it forces you to barrel stuff the enemy with ranged units that don't want to get too close. Then you have to pump every gun from your Astra Militarum unit into the squad you're trying to shoot, and it feels a little wrong? Like, the flavor of the detachment is that both types of units have to shoot the same thing for a buff, and the Astra Militarum unit will usually do enough that the buff becomes a moot point since you were forced to fire every gun into the chosen enemy unit. There were multiple times I had to catch myself from using the rule incorrectly because it's so damn specific on how you get that +1 to hit. It just feels like a bit of an oversight in how the rule actually functions, and I know the solution to this is to bring smaller Astra Militarum units to proc the rule, but my army is already filled with hundreds of small chaff dudes. It's not really in my interest to bring more. This ends up putting you in a scenario where you either waste firepower and possible damage not shooting the right squad with the right gun, sacrificing all your Astra Militarum units early into the game so you can apply the detachment buff, or you just gotta say fuck it and not use the detachment rule. At least to me, it feels like I'd rather have 500 points of IG units, because then I can still bring my special tanks, my little bomb drones, or mortars, without forcing my entire army into a shitty, terrible rule set. Speaking of terrible rules, the enhancements really have nothing to do with the detachment. They're the most generic placeholder enhancements I've ever seen. 3 out of 4 of them feel like they could be put into any other detachment without feeling out of place, and I feel like they genuinely could. One of them's pretty thematic and kinda useful, so it gets a pass. And the stratagems. Oh lord, the stratagems. Now, it's fine to have niche stratagems, and it's fine to have mediocre stratagems, but when they're both, and feature some more of the bullshit restrictions that the detachment rule has, I get mad. One stratagem is the most niche, most matchup-dependent stratagem I've ever seen. And then there's the basic Gene Stealer move the ambush marker strat that a lot of our detachments seem to have, except this one's flavored so they move closer to the Astra Militarum tanks. Then we have an even worse Revive Astra Militarum infantry strat that you have to roll for. Even if you spend the CP for it, and even if you fail, you can only use that strat once a battle. The pain of paying my last CP to revive a unit and seeing the dice fail, my one chance to do so squandered?
Fucking goddamn fucking bitch! I'm a little depressed.
And then finally we have the 3 with the power of friendship strats between the 2 different allied units. One of the strats locks all your guns for both units, and in turn, you get reroll wound rolls, which is pretty of 1. Reroll wound rolls of 1? Are you fucking kidding me? Fuck you. You mean to tell me that the buff strat, the one you're supposed to use when you want to have a better chance at killing something, only lets you reroll wound rolls of 1, and you have to take the debuff of locking both units' guns to 1 squad?
Throw it all away there. Waste it all, fucking goddamn Rockefeller. Waste it all.
One of them lets your guard units not care about the lower class and start firing off rounds into an active fight that includes friendlies, but overall, it actually isn't a bad strat and can be a good way to help kill off a unit that you otherwise might have struggled to kill. Why is it 2 CP? Finally, the only good stratagem in the detachment is Suppress and Overwhelm. It stops an enemy unit from using the Fire Overwatch strat and gives your Gene Stealer Colts reroll charges into them, all for 1 CP. It's actually kind of the king of this detachment and feels oddly out of place because it's so well written comparatively.
Son, come close to me, I want to tell you something. I want to tell you that for all these years, that the secret to my life is this jewel. So don't touch it. Because if you touch it, I will die, so don't touch it. I just wanted to tell you that. Alright.
Oh. This is the part where Gabe, a foolish creature of a man, tried to make new rules for the detachment. However, he is in fact an idiot. So, take everything with a grain of salt.
Whenever a friendly Astra Militarum unit targets an enemy unit with a ranged attack, you can then select to flare that enemy unit. Each Astra Militarum unit may only shoot 1 flare a turn, and a max of 4 enemy units may be flared a turn. When an enemy unit is marked, you may select which flare effect to take place. Focus Fire Flare. Whenever a friendly Gene Stealer Colt unit selects the flared enemy unit with a ranged attack, they gain +1 to their ballistic skill. Funnel the Enraged Masses. Whenever a friendly Gene Stealer Colt unit selects a flared enemy unit with a charge, they get +1 to their charge rolls. I know pick a target rules aren't very creative, but I tried to make it a little less boring by playing with the actual interaction of the rule and basically letting them pick which buff they want depending on the situation. The enhancements, in my opinion, should be split down the middle, so that way characters on both sides have some toys to play with. Special Tactics. Once per turn, when this Astra Militarum character unit is selected to shoot a flare, you may choose to flare 2 units. Both units cannot have the same flare effect, or you may apply both flare effects to a single unit. Infected Command. Astra Militarum infantry characters can lead Neophyte Hybrids or Acolyte Hybrids units. Gene Stealer Colt characters can lead Cadian Shock Troops, Catachan Jungle Fighters, or Death Corps of Krieg units. Lead by example. This tank commander can do an action and still shoot. A trap sprung. This Genestealer Cult's infantry or mounted unit can use the rapid ingress stratagem for 0 CP. If they come down within 6 inches of a friendly Astra Militarum unit, this unit's weapons get twin linked when targeting a flared unit until the end of your next fight phase. Each detachment has 6 stratagems, and these really fucking suck. The creation of stratagems is hard, and there's a lot of different parts that have to be considered. From the how it happens to what it does, why it's in this detachment, and any restrictions that might be imposed on it so that it doesn't become a monster of a card you spam every turn. Kill Circle. Target an enemy unit that is in between a Genestealer Cult unit and a friendly Astra Militarum unit. Both Genestealer Cult and Astra Militarum units get a bonus to shooting against the encircled unit, with a bonus if they are flared. Suppress and Overwhelm. I'm just ripping this from the codex, I'm just gonna be so real with you, it's perfect. Rigged to Explode. Do not roll for Deadly Demise. It just goes boom. Regimental Reinforcements. Spend 2 to 4 resurgence points to respawn an Astra Militarum squad. 2 for the minimum squad size, 4 for the max squad size. Concealed Entrance. Select one respawn token that is within 6 inches of an Astra Militarum vehicle or character. The enemy unit now has to be within 6 inches of the marker to destroy it, and the unit that respawns there can pop up within 6 inches of the enemy. This one was actually made by my buddy David, who did the Southern narration. Thanks, David.
Hi. So my idea for this one was like, I was thinking like spy, like the zapper in TF2. Basically, I like the idea of like the espionage part of Genestealers. So the idea is something along the lines of you try to get a unit like close enough to like an enemy, like monster or vehicle unit, and if they can stay in melee range without dying by the next command phase, then there's some sort of like damage output to that, just like automatically. And I'm not sure how that would look because I'm not a huge rules guy, but that's the flavor idea at least. So
Pretty cool.
pretty cool, pretty simple.
What would you name this strat?
Fuck, would I name it? I don't have a name. I wasn't I wasn't told there'd be questions this interview. Sabotage, I guess. I don't know. Do they have Mutated Sabotage?
Mutated Sabotage. Once a Genestealer Cult unit is in engagement range of an enemy vehicle or monster, if that Genestealer Cult unit is still in range of the enemy unit by the Genestealer Cult player's next command phase, or the end of the game if it's the last round, the enemy unit takes a bunch of mortal wounds. These changes are not perfect and might not be the changes that the detachment needs, but they're the changes that I thought sounded fun and flavorful. No matter what you think of my new rules, at least we don't have to lock all our guns to one squad every time we want to actually use the detachment rule. But let's be serious for a second. Brood Brothers is a small part of a already small and unpopular faction, but it's an important pillar of foundation for the Genestealer cults, and the way this detachment, the only way to show that off, has been tied down and gagged for the entirety of its existence has been extremely saddening. They may not be our models, but in a weird way, they are our models. From the very creation of Genestealer cults, the idea that we had some way on the tabletop to show our infection of human imperial worlds is a huge core identity to Genestealer cults. And like many other factions this edition, a core part of the faction was pretty much butchered in front of us for the sake of simplicity. I have very much liked 10th edition, and with 11th around the corner, it feels like our last chance to call GW out on some of their poor handlings of important parts of different factions. So that way, hopefully in the future, these issues are either solved or just returned to how they used to be. If I gotta be forced to run this detachment, to use my fun stolen tank models, then I'd like, at least at the bare minimum for this detachment, to not be dog shit.